Hey everyone, I am Anika Gandhi from Anika's DIY Life, and today we are building this outdoor storage box or bench. It is a super easy project, and all you need is a saw to cut up the boards and a power drill and a pocket hole jig to put it all together. And I have you covered with all the details and step-by-step tutorial. But before we get started, a quick shout out to Mendocino Redwood for sponsoring this project. Now let's go. So I started by making cuts on my miter saw. You can totally use a circular saw as well. I have the entire cut list, including step-by-step plans and illustrations to guide you through building this on my website, and I will add a link to that in the description below. To build the storage box, I am using redwood boards. Redwood is not just strong and lightweight, it is also sustainable and decay resistant, making it the perfect candidate for outdoor projects. You can find Mendocino Redwood exclusively at the Home Depot. Now don't let the table saw scare you. I had enough 2x4s and 2x6s left over that I decided to rip my own 2x2s. But you can totally just purchase these from the store and cut it down to length. But if you have a table saw, then this is certainly an option. Once all the boards were cut, I gave them a very light sanding with 150 grit sandpaper. The other great thing about these redwood boards is that they are also pretty great quality, meaning that they don't really need a lot of sanding to get them smooth. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and stain all of these before we assemble them. Typically I don't do that, but because we have the slatted look, it can be really hard to get your stain into the tight spaces later. I am using a waterproofing transparent deck stain in the color redwood because I just love how it retains the richness of redwood and also makes it pop. It is definitely a lot of staining, but a few nice tunes on the earphones makes it go pretty fast. It took me about an hour to get all these boards stained and ready to go. I let them dry overnight before getting back to assembling them the next day. Now to assemble. I started out with the short sides. I spaced them out on my workbench using scrap 1x boards because the spacing between them is 3/4 of an inch. Once aligned, I added the 2x2 boards on each of the ends and attached using wood screws. Now I'm using these special screws, which I will link to below, which are my absolute new favorites, and they don't need pre-drilling and pull the boards together nice and tight. But if you are using regular wood screws, be sure to pre-drill them so you don't split the boards. With the side ready, I went ahead and arranged the long sides on the workbench with the spacers in the middle. And then I placed the short end that I had just built on the side and attached using wood screws. As you are attaching these, you want to be careful about their placement because you don't want to hit the screws you added earlier. You do need to add 2 screws into each board to keep all the boards nice and tight, so I went back and added the second screw into each of the joints. Similarly, I attached the other small side on the other end as well. And now it is time for the fourth side, which I arranged on the workbench. And then I placed the entire rest of the box on top and attached. and the box is done. Now for the top and bottom. They are built using mostly 2x4s and pocket holes. I made pocket holes on each end of the slats with the Craig jig at a 1.5 inch setting. I am using the Craig 720, but you can also use the 320 or the 520 as well. The top has two 2x6 boards as slats, and I made pocket holes on those as well. Once all the pocket holes were made, it was time to assemble. I used wood glue and 2.5 inch pocket hole screws to attach the slats to the side rails. The spacing for the top is 3/4 inch, so I used a 1x scrap board for that. As I went along, I noticed that the slats and the rails were no longer aligned. This is why you need to use a face clamp to hold the boards down. So I switched out how I was attaching them and started using a face clamp at each joint to get all the boards nice and aligned. The top is built the exact same way, except it has 2x6 boards on each of the ends, and the spacing between the slats is 1/2 inch. For that spacing, I used 2 1/4 inch boards. Once everything was built, I noticed that some of the end grains did not have stains, so I went ahead and stained those. At this point, I think things were getting heavy enough, so I took them out to the backyard, which is where my box is going to live. I aligned the bottom to the box, making sure that the pocket holes were towards the outside so that they would be hidden underneath the box. And then I just went ahead and attached it using 2.5 inch wood screws all around. And then I attached the casters to make it easy to move around. Be sure to use locking casters so that you can just lock them up and use them as a bench. I added a heavy-duty hinge to the top. And then attached it to the box. And that's it. It's a quick, simple build. It makes a great spot to store all the toys, equipment, pool toys, and tools, or anything you would like on the front porch, backyard, or poolside. It's a great beginner-friendly project. It took me 2 days to make it. 1 day to stain it and let it dry, and the next day to put it all together. So it's a great weekend project. Remember, I have the plans for it linked in the description below. I also have a whole bunch of beginner-friendly projects that you can make this weekend. So be sure to check those out. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss out any future projects.